Welcome back to the Growth Over Goals podcast. I get to be with a return guest today. She was actually our first ever guest circa 2020. COVID hits. We start a podcast. This gracious person who I didn't know at the time, other than, by way of YouTube and a couple of speaking engagements, says yes, she comes on the podcast. We get the time wrong. I don't know if it was me or Ashley. I don't know who scheduled it, but we get the time zone wrong. And so here she is joining this probably for her was like her 200th podcast. For us, it was our first. And she was so kind. And I went back and listened to it literally yesterday as I'm preparing for this guest that I'm about to introduce you to. And it was just not good. Like, have you ever started something and you're like, you look back like, oh my gosh, my first time was so bad. It was so bad. She was great. I was not good as a host. But it is a great honor to welcome back one of, I believe, America's top communicators. My opinion, she's top 3 or 4 literally on the planet right now. Forbes agrees with me. Forbes named her a top 20 speaker. She's a best-selling author. She's a mom to 3 boys, husband to Ben. She's the CEO and founder of Seiko Designs and a world changer who's bringing so much joy, energy, and light to the people that she connects with. Liz Bohannon, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. You did leave off one pretty important part of my LinkedIn bio. It does say first guest on the Growth Over Goals podcast. So I just want you to not forget that. Oh. And here's the thing. You know how much I love beginnings. I'm obsessed with being a beginner and the willingness to suck before you get excellence. Excellent. So the fact that I got to share that with you and be in it, actually a highlight for me. I'd so much rather be the part of a messy, beautiful, awkward beginning than, I don't know, something that's super polished and professional. So that's my jam.
Well, it is uniquely serendipitous that, given your work that we're talking about, beginnings, you wrote a book called Beginner's Pluck. There are some people listening who might not know Liz Bohannon. And so if you don't, I want you to give us just like the 2-minute, you decided to dream small. I'd love for you to talk about what dreaming small means to you and just share that. I mean, this is a crazy story of how you got your start and helping all these women in Africa. I don't want to steal your thunder. So can you just give us a quick backdrop? We're going to talk about some really, really rich, meaningful content today. I think your content is as good as any leader that I've ever heard from. And I want to get to that, but I want to also set the stage and give people a window into your world. So talk to us about your beginning with Seiko Design and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, so I don't major in quick, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to try as hard as I can. I'll get an A for effort here.
We have just so our listeners know, I was just on your podcast and now we're trying to squeeze this in. And so we are up against a timeline, but we're going to try to pack as much as we can so long as I'll shut up and let you talk. Here we go.
So when I was 22, I just graduated with a master's degree in journalism and had a lot of interest, knowledge, understanding about a thing I would have said I was passionate about at the time, which was challenges facing women and girls living in global extreme poverty and conflict and post-conflict zones. Graduated into the recession, couldn't find some sort of big dream job, didn't have a big dream. I think, we're of a similar generation where I think we were the first to really get if you want your life to matter, it needs to be big and you got to go out and change the world and you got to dream big. And I think that messaging works for a lot of people. But I remember for me, felt pretty overwhelming. Like, I'm 22. I have no life experience. I have no big dreams. Like, definitely no one wants to hire me for some big, interesting job. I guess that means I don't get to have this, meaningful, interesting, fulfilling life. And I had a moment a couple months into my first job where I realized that I had a lot of knowledge about this thing that I said I was passionate about, this topic. But the reality was I didn't have any friends. I didn't have any relationships. I didn't have a community with anyone who was from kind of this entire large people group that I said I apparently really cared a lot about and was really quote unquote passionate about. And so for me in that moment, really my entire life changed when I was like, it's not a big, fancy, impressive dream. It's actually really small. My new life goal is to actually close the gap between what I say I care about and what I say I'm passionate about in my actual life, my friends, my relationships, my community. And so I quit my job. I spent my entire life savings, which was admittedly under $1,000 on a one-way plane ticket to East Africa with the entire goal of making friends and building community and relationships with folks that were impacted by the things I said I actually cared about. And from that, a whole life really unfolded that I did not see coming. I ended up meeting a group of girls in between high school and university that were wicked smart, but couldn't get into college because they couldn't afford it. And I just started thinking and dreaming and ended up creating something basically as like kind of a gap year program for these really academically gifted young women to stay together and to earn money to pay for university. And that ended up growing into an international lifestyle fashion brand where we worked in not only Uganda, but really started expanding East Africa, North Africa, Southeast Asia, Central America, South America, using products and fashion as a way to create dignified, fair wage, economic and educational opportunity for women in those various economies. So I'm an entrepreneur, technically, but the heart of it for me really has always been community, relationships, and connection with oneself,
Yep.
and then and with others. And that's a nutshell. How'd I do?
It's a good segue. You did great. That was quick. 2 minutes. I mean, that's quick.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yay.
Well, people have to know that part of your story. Like, so, I want people to know who you are before we talk about what you're doing. But I love this idea of dreaming small. You talk about going from dreamer to doer. You are, in fact, a doer. I think you gave this talk, correct me if I'm wrong, the first time you talked about this new content. Maybe you've talked about it in other settings, but in a big public way. Global Leadership Summit was the first time you gave the talk. Okay.
Yeah. I highly recommend the first time you give new content, it being in front of several 100,000 people.
The biggest leadership event in the world. No big deal.
Yeah, it's a great time to test out new material, people.
You rocked it. I mean, you were unbelievable. And I think Craig would say you were the top speaker of the event. And this content, so there's two things. The delivery is great. And we're going to spend a little bit of time, if we have time today, on communication, because you're truly such a gifted communicator. But this content is so rich and relevant. There's a loneliness epidemic. You're helping organizations and schools and communities to become more connected and to go deeper with one another. And you've got some real reasons why this matters. So talk to us about connection and community and your work attacking the loneliness epidemic.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned we are in the midst of what the former US Surgeon General would say is an epidemic of loneliness and isolation, meaning more people in America are struggling with chronic, which means sometimes or always feeling lonely. When we hear these things, we hear epidemic, that feels very big. I don't know about you, but when I hear epidemic, I'm immediately thinking like public health policy. And then my next thought is, I don't do that, right? Like, it's just like, that's somebody else's problem or somebody else's job. And so part of what I'm trying to do is normalize. We have a lot of misunderstanding about loneliness in our culture. So about 61% of Americans would say they're chronically lonely. And lonely is simply defined, I think even when we hear the word lonely, we can think like, oh, some old cat lady who hasn't left her house in years because she's a hoarder and her front door is being blocked by magazines that she's been saving since the 60s. That's actually not what loneliness means. Loneliness is defined by the perceived gap between the relationships that you need and you want and the ones that you actually have. That's it. That's what loneliness is. And in just that simple kind of psychological state, it's a painful psychological state when we believe we don't have the relationships that we need or want to thrive. The cascading impact that has on our mental health and even our physical health, chronic loneliness. And again, not like being a hoarder who's stuck in your house, but just simply going, I don't think I have the relationships and the friendships and really the safe and secure relationships that I need and want and desire. If you're experiencing that on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, the impact that has on your actual physical body is greater than smoking 14 cigarettes a day. It is greater than having diabetes or being obese. Okay, so when we think about health, we as Americans I think the first thing that comes to mind for us is physical health, which is great. And that's really important. And taking care of our bodies is an important part of having a flourishing life. Really, the last 10 and 15 years, we've grown a lot in our awareness and understanding of the importance of mental health. It's not just your physical body, but mental health is an important part of it as well. There's a third pillar of human flourishing. We literally cannot be healthy, whole humans, and it's called social health. And there is a chance that like 90% of people listening to this podcast will hear the phrase social health and go, huh? I've literally never heard that term. And so my mission and the thing that I am passionate about is really bringing to the forefronts of our culture, of our society, of our understanding of ourselves and one another, the importance of social health and how we can make micro changes in our own life to be more healthy and whole and flourishing. And it's possible. I think a big thing is we have to understand that the way that we are living here in the year of our Lord 2025 in America specifically is not normal. It's not normal. We're all frogs in boiling water because we've all experienced it together. And so now we're all going like, I think that this is just kind of part of being a human. This is just the way that it is. So it happens in an epidemic. Enough people struggle with something with a degree of intensity in a short enough amount of time that you start looking to the left and to the right and go, oh, I think this is just how it is. But it's not normal. It's not inevitable. We have so much agency to design lives that prioritize social health. And that's what gets me up in the morning.
So you've done deep research on this topic and you talk about it in a very practical way. And you talk about this in the context of communities and workplace culture and even families. And we have doers listening on this podcast that want to be able to do something about this. And I know a few of your answers because I've listened to you talk about this so much and so often. And I love your work. But talk to us about what do we do, Liz, to attack the loneliness epidemic and help people feel more connected? Let's start at work, workplace culture. What could we do there to change the way that people are feeling?
I think a huge thing in workplace culture is, and again, I will be the first to say, by the way, none of this is rocket science. In the same way, Jordan, that you talk about encouragement, I loved in your book how you kind of talked about one of the things that keeps people from reaching out and being encouraging is you think you have to have some sort of life-changing, amazing, Pulitzer Prize winning, I've never heard this before. It has to be unique in order for it to be valuable for me to take up space. And your thesis is like, literally no. It could be the same thing over and over again, slightly tweaked, and it matters. It's that consistency and that commitment. It's the same with social health. All of these principles, none of it's rocket science. Actually, the magic is in the commitment and the consistency. In the workplace culture element of this, I think the first thing is just the basic understanding that you are a human. If you are a leader, you are a humanoid leader and you are leading other humans. And we are coming into the workplace every single day with all of our stuff, with our stories, with our baggage, with our home relationships, with our financial pressure, with the stress and worry that we're carrying with our kids. And oftentimes I think leaders can hear that and go, yeah, but we have a lot to get done in the workplace. This isn't like a group therapy place. Like I need my people to kind of be able to compartmentalize because we have a board meeting to prepare for. Like we can't sit around and talk about our feelings. And trust me, I'm another entrepreneur CEO. Like I'm not a group therapist leader who's going like, no, we should work 10 hours a week and spend the other 30 talking about our feelings. It is not mutually exclusive. So what I'm not saying is you should like lessen your hopes and expectations around excellence and productivity by shifting your focus to community and connection and relationships. It's actually, if you want to unlock productivity and innovation in the workplace and become more successful, you have to be a leader who understands the importance of relational and social health. And as a leader, you are creating a third culture. Your workplace, your people, every one of your employees is coming from a background, a childhood experience, a family of origin, a marriage, a family system, a religion that's kind of taught them how to be in relationship, how to do conflict, how to have conversation. And one of the most basic fundamental parts of work is bringing people together to like collaborate share ideas, be in conversation, get in agreement, and then move with a level of agreement in a direction with a degree of enthusiasm. That is what we are doing. One of the most basic elements, like how do we do conversation? How do we connect in our workplace? What is you have your story about how you did it when you were a child growing up. You over here have a way that's become very normal because this is the way you and your wife communicate at home. I, as the leader, am going to go, I'm not leaving that to chance. I'm not going to let everybody just come in with their own way of doing things and then go, and we're going to hope that it generally works out, right? Like it would be bananas to hire, whatever job it's going to be. Say it's somebody in sales and to go, you know what? You've had a bunch of different sales jobs in the past. I'm sure you've used a bunch of different CRM systems. We have our way of doing it. We're not going to explicitly tell you what it is. We're just going to kind of let you bring in your own stuff and what you've done in the past and what you uniquely feel like has worked for you. And we're just going to see how that goes. We're just going to put you in a room and see if that works out. Like that would be an insane thing for a leader for an onboarding process for a sales professional, right? But we do it with culture and communication. We do it. We just say, whatever you're kind of bringing in, hopefully it's going to work out. So a lot of it is around the leader kind of taking the initiative to go, I get to create a culture, a subculture within this organization. And there are rules. There are rules for how we operate. There are rules for how we engage. There are expectations. And if you as a leader have an expectation, you have to articulate it. You have to articulate it and you have to train on it and you have to remind people of it. And if you expect it, you have to inspect it, right? If you're saying, I expect this type of behavior, you as the leader need to put in, how are you inspecting that behavior? How are you holding people accountable to that behavior? So it's not some sort of like fluffy kumbaya, let's all get in a room and like talk about our feelings and, maybe do shrooms or something. This is like what I'm actually asking you to do is operationalize community connection and relationships, put some rules and some spoken expectations around it in the same way that you are doing probably in every other part of your business if you're remotely successful in business.
You're asking people to do this by design instead of by default. And
that's good. That's really good.
Research is really deep. I want to take people, I wish they could experience the full Liz Bohannon presentation. I watched you speak for 2 hours in Atlanta. I don't know, what was it, 2 months ago? Normally 2 hours, you're like, man, this feels like 2 hours. Felt like 20 minutes. And everybody was like, we'll take a full day. We'll take 2 days. Like it was just so rich with practical ideas, research, but also you offered an experience. I did not ask your permission to share this. So I'm kind of asking now as we're recording this podcast. You can say no. I'm
texting Jordan privately. Stop right now. No, I'm just kidding. You have my permission.
I don't know if this is okay. And but here we go. So you did this sort of exercise at the end of your presentation that was ultra powerful. Probably the single most powerful moment I've experienced in any presentation that I've ever listened to. And I think you know what I'm talking about. It's the sort of the vulnerability exercise. Number one, I'm wondering, are you willing to share that? Number two, if you are willing to share that, is that something that a leader could then also do? And I understand they're not going to be able to do it the Liz Bohannon way, but I'm wondering, is there an exercise like that, or is that specific exercise? Could you offer that to your workplace culture?
Yes.
And then let's talk about it.
So to honestly just be mindful of time, I'll summarize. Jordan is referring to an exercise. One of the principles of building secure relationships and community and connection. I will back up and just say, when we hear the word community, oftentimes, again, it can feel big. It can feel big and kind of amorphous. So I want to define a community is actually just 3 or more people in a mutually beneficial relationship. So really, when all it is it comes down to like, I want you, every time you think about, I want to build more community and connection in the workplace. I don't want you to think about starting big. I want you to go small, and then you think it's small, and I actually want you to go smaller. And then you're like, this is really small. How could this possibly matter? And then I actually want you to go even smaller, because at the end of the day, a healthy community is healthy, really one-on-one relationships. And then those one-on-one relationships kind of invite others and fold others into it, and they become bigger, and there kind of is this like system that gets created. But at its most, you think about like the building blocks of human existence. You go further and further into the microscope and we start to see, but this is what it is on a cellular level. And that's what community is. So we don't need to be intimidated by this. I also don't want you to start with some like big company-wide huge initiative to like build community. I want you to start going like, does a single human in this workplace feel like they have the tools, the expectation, the security and safety in the one-off relationships on a day-to-day basis where they feel like they can operate at their full capacity, where they feel safe, seen, known, and secure. What that looks like in a personal context is different than what it looks like in a workplace context. So I'm also wanting to be very clear that what it means to be in a safe and secure workplace relationship, it totally is different than what it looks like with a spouse or with a family member or with a best friend. But the building blocks are actually the same. So one of the principles is and this is one of the later principles that I will say. So we want to build up to this. You also don't want to lead with vulnerability. I call it intimacy leapfrogging, when we lead with vulnerability without doing the previous steps that are required to build healthy and safe and secure communities and relationship. So if you walk into a room and you don't have any of these kind of like building blocks in place, and you're like, let's all share our greatest trauma to build, connection, that would be intimacy and vulnerability leapfrogging. You have leaped over some kind of necessary building blocks, and that can become quite messy and unhealthy because nobody knows what to do with it, and there isn't trust and there isn't processes. But we reach a certain level of relationship where vulnerability, authenticity, and interdependence are a key part. I have never been a part of a community that I would define as a dense network of support, where by and large, people in that community feel like life is hard. We have challenges. It's definitely not a pain-free existence. I deal with a lot of things, but generally loneliness and isolation and a lack of connection and support isn't one of those things. I feel like I have the human connection and support that I need to not just survive life, but to thrive. I have never been in a community marked by being this dense network of support that didn't also have an intentional culture around we show up, we tell the truth, and we ask for help. In America specifically, we have commodified community and connection. We are arguably kind of the most, and I don't say this in a disparaging way at all, but I think it is very important for people to understand how radical, I'm using the word radical intentionally. America is a radical place to live. When we look at the globe, about 70 to 75% of the globe would say their worldview, kind of the fabric, the DNA of that culture would be defined by as collectivist. The way that we think, the first thought that we have when we are addressing a problem, when we are trying to come up with a new solution is, what is the solution that will serve the greater good the most? That's just like where our brains go. That's a collectivist culture. Then we have about 25 to 30% of the world is an individualist culture. And that means the very first thought, the way that we are oriented is, what is going to be best for me as an individual? So, and that, I know that can even sound a little bit morally or judgmenty, and it's really not. They're just different ways. There are beautiful parts, like the manifestation and the fruit of individualist cultures cannot be denied. Like, I don't trust somebody who's just like, nope, nothing good can come out of that worldview. Actually, extraordinary good can come out of that worldview. I also don't trust somebody who's like collectivism. That's immediately going to, neither are good or bad. They all have their shadow sides and they all have their gifts. And we actually really need both in the world. So hear me say this. I'm not like America's individualist and that makes us bad. It does present certain challenges. And if we're not aware of those challenges, then we're going to be ruled by them. And we're going to live in the dark side of it versus being able to really like actually lean into the gifts of this way of thinking. But it's so important for people to understand what a radical place America is. And I'm guessing, I don't know, a lot of your listeners, I'm assuming, are American.
Yeah, you're talking to them.
So we are already in the minority. America is in that minority 25%. If you take that minority and you literally rank what's the most individualistic culture in the world, it is by pretty much every metric going to be the United States of America. So I just want you to think about this. When you think about humanity, most of us think about what's normal for us, right? We're just kind of like, well, this is my little subculture, so this is what's normal. What I want to help people do is go, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's take a minute. I want to back up. I want you to see the bell curve. And then on that bell curve, I want you to know that we live over here. And I know if you can't see the video, you can't see where I'm pointing, but I am pointing to the furthest end of the tail of the bell curve. And I say that because until we understand that, we can't actually think and act and build lives with a sense of kind of really agency and intention. And this is the understanding that really helps us get away from like, this is just the way things are. Like, this is just what it means to be a human. Every single part of the loneliness epidemic you can look at and you go, we did that. This is because of that. We created this, and here's all the good that came out of this. And then actually, here's the unintended consequence. I mean, everything, Jordan, from the way that we are designing our cities to social media, to attached garages, to cars, to highways, to infrastructure, every part of our culture. I once had a business mentor. I was really struggling in my business with something. I can't remember what it was. But, I'm bemoaning, I don't know what, the market, consumer behavior, something big that is out of my control. And he looked at me, Jordan, he goes, you do realize your company is perfectly designed to get the results that it's getting.
Wow.
And I was like, excuse me? Your company is perfectly designed to get the results that it's getting. So if the results that you're getting are not the results that you want, you have a design problem, and you need to go back and figure out what is it about the design of your company that is producing these results. Our culture, but I think even more importantly for this conversation, our individual lives are the same way. If the result is loneliness, disconnection, isolation, that isn't just the way things are. That is a result of a design choice. And we can go back to our lives and we can say, how can I change the design of my life in order to create different results?
Wow.
Okay. I'm realizing that I didn't even answer. We haven't even gotten to like the vulnerability place.
This is rich. We could talk for an hour. I'm just bummed.
Or two or three, as you've experienced. It was our mutual friend, Chad, who invited me to come speak. And he was literally like, yeah, take up however much time you want. And I was like, Chad, that is such a dangerous thing to tell somebody like me. I need an actual cap at which the lights will go off. I have never been in a community that is marked by a dense network of support where it has not been designed to promote and to encourage interdependence. And that is, for any people group on the face of human earth right now, Americans struggle the most with that, because we kind of have this consumer commodity lens on community and connection. So one of the beliefs that we have unfortunately kind of adopted is around social capital. When I say social capital, a lot of people will kind of come up with, obviously this is a mind picture, but this idea that we all have a bank, right? We've got a bank of our social capital, of our relationships. We think about, well, how do we grow our bank? Well, we meet new people. And then when we meet them, we're like a good friend. We encourage, we do favors. We ask, when somebody needs help, we step in, we show up with the casserole. All of these things we feel like are adding to our cultural capital. That is actually right thinking. We don't have that wrong. That is correct. When you show up for a friend, you are making a deposit into your relational capital. Here's where Americans specifically get it very wrong. We have this idea that when we receive help, and definitely when we ask for help, we are making a withdrawal from the bank account. And it doesn't feel good to make a withdrawal, right? That brings up feelings of security for us. It brings up feelings of, like, do I have enough money in the bank to make this purchase, to make this withdrawal? Like, have I deposited enough into the relationship in order to make this ask? Or how long is it going to be until I can pay it back, right? I'm going into debt. And so I'm thinking through, how long will it be until I can get right with this person and kind of bring my bank account up to a comfortable place? We get really in our head about it. And most of us end up going, it's not worth it. Like, I'll just do it on my own. It's not worth that feeling of insecurity or, unsafety that comes from like having a dwindling bank account. What we have to understand is that that's not how the economy of relationships work. When we show up for people, when we do a favor, when we lend a hand, we are making a deposit. And when we allow others to show up for us, we are making arguably even a bigger deposit into the bank account. And if we don't do that, if we don't engage in that side of the equation of not just being the helper, but being willing to be helped, then there's a cap to the safety and security that relationship will be able to provide for us. What we are also doing is we are kind of capping the other person at the level of safety that they can feel with us, because the number one thing that we can do in relationships to convince other people, like, I'm a safe person, you can ask for help, I want to show up for you. You can say that until you're blue in the face. The number one thing that you can do to actually show that you mean it is by going first and like being the one that says, I'm not okay. I've got a challenge. I have a problem. I'm going to let you in. And then I'm even going to receive or maybe even ask for the specific type of support. Now, all of a sudden, you are you have opened up the door. And the next time they are, whether it's a work problem. And so again, in the workplace culture, this means how are you intentionally creating a culture where people are allowed to raise their hands and ask for help, and where that is actually celebrated. Thank you for asking is one of the most powerful phrases. When someone, either in the workplace or in your personal life, when someone is courageous and vulnerable enough to show their stuff and to ask for help and support, and you respond with, oh my gosh, thank you so much for asking me. That changes the fabric of a relationship, because now we're in kind of this gift economy. And now all of a sudden the asking becomes the gift itself. And the level of security and connection and safety that creates in a people group, that is actually what insulates us from loneliness and from isolation. Most people that I meet don't need more friends. A lot of books being written about like how to find your people and find friends. And you might be in a situation where you truly do need to meet entirely new people. A lot of us actually have the relationships around us. It's a matter of cultivating that level of safety and security in the relationships that we do have that really do insulate us from isolation and loneliness.
You've done such a good job of explaining to us why this matters. What do we do as leaders? And how can we create change with our culture and our family, with our communities, in the workplace? Talk to us.
So specifically as leaders, I would say start with yourself. Lead yourself in this area. One thing that I see with leaders is there's this transformation moment where they get really excited. They know that they need to build a culture at their workplace that's, more relationally equipped and socially healthy, but they're not actually doing that for themselves first. And that, my friends, is a recipe for disaster. Might be hyperbolic, but I don't think it is, because the work of community building, you as a leader really do have to be pursuing social and relational health in your own life. So you need to go first, which actually the first principle of getting rich, RICH, we have to start with I, because, when you find a good acronym, you kind of have to work around it, is taking initiative. So it's taking initiative. And in a leader's life, here are the two most powerful ROIs that a leader can invest in their own life. Every leader needs a small group of committed leaders who get their world, but are not in their world. Okay. That get their world, but are not in their world. What do I mean by that? I mean, they get your world. Like Jordan, even just offline, we were having a conversation and we are able to just talk about things. There is a shared knowledge and understanding. We are in the world. We know the same people. We know how the world works. So I am able to share things with you that I know you're going to get it because you have context, because this is the road that you're on. This is also your life. These are the things that you're wrestling through. When I say not in your world, what I mean is these are not your employees. These are not your investors. These are not your board of directors. These are not people who there will be any level of kind of filter of like, I need to show up as the polished leader whose numbers are looking great, who everything is up and to the right. And I'm not saying you can't have great community and connection with investors or employees, but I'm saying for this small group of people that I'm talking about, they need to get your world so that when you say something that to the average person, feels shocking or like they're not that, because they get your world, but they're not in your world, meaning there is no filter. Like when you are sharing the lows of the lows, when you are going through something that would make, the average mom on the PTA or dad at the soccer field jaw drop because they've never heard of such a challenge. They get it. And you can truly share your burdens with these people because you're not filtering. You don't have to perform for them. They get to know the real you. So every leader needs a small group of other leaders who they can be completely honest and transparent with, who get their world, who can brainstorm, who can, help meet them in those places because they're shared understanding. I would also say, and we were talking about this offline earlier, Jordan, I believe that one of the greatest investments leaders specifically can make in their own personal lives is actually a group of friends who don't even get your world. And these are the friends that you were referencing for me, that I'm like, I was telling Jordan, my core proximate community, the people. So I live in an intentional community up in Portland, Oregon. I literally share property with my best friends. So I'm in either literally we share a backyard or within a couple of blocks of about a dozen of my best friends. That's how I have designed and oriented my life. And this specific group of people, they don't even get my world. And here's the amazing thing about this is that I was joking with Jordan. I was like, if my whole world blew up professionally, if everything fell apart, if I got canceled, if I lost every piece of business, whatever, name the cataclysmic worst case scenario, the only way my friends would even know about it is if I texted them the link to the place where they could read more about my epic fall. And my friends care about my profession only as it relates to how does my profession and my vocation and my calling, how is it impacting my spirit, my soul, my well-being, how I'm showing up as a full human. And I believe the risks I'm able to take out in the professional world, and honestly, I would attribute a lot of, I think, the health that I have navigating being a public figure really does come back to, I have a core group of friends who love me because of the friend I am. They love me because of who my character. They love me honestly just because of the amount of history and life that we've shared together. And none of that would be impacted. I went through a very challenging business season, like so many of us early on in COVID. I mean, my entire business model, 100% of our revenue came from basically in-person live events, people gathering, in spaces, and literally overnight, the decree was issued. You are no longer allowed. You are legally not allowed to do what you've been doing. Meanwhile, all of our production and importing into the US, everything got halted. So I have no product to sell and I have no channel to sell it through. So, and I'm in a pretty cash intensive business in fashion. We're manufacturing. So, it's we're spending money way in advance before we get paid for that same thing. It's a long cash cycle. So, I mean, I literally remember going to bed and being like, there's no way. This is game over. We don't have product and we don't have a revenue, in our channel is gone overnight. And, if you're a leader, if you're an entrepreneur, these are the moments that it's just you wake up with cold sweats in the middle of the night. And I remember thinking, I've worked 15 years or however long it was at this time, it's all gone, all of the kind of catastrophizing that you're doing. And then I remember having this moment. I could cry thinking about it, where I was like, if that happens, I wake up the next day, I'm in the same house. Because literally here was my thought, Jordan. My thought was, even if worst case scenario, we go bankrupt, right? I was like, our friends would never not cover enough to get our mortgage paid for a while until we got back on our feet. So here's what I thought. I lose everything professionally. I show up, I'm sleeping in the same bed. I'm in the same neighborhood. I see the same people that I love, that I've committed my life to every day. My kids are safe and loved by a group of adults who they've known since the day that they were born. My sense of that I get to belong here and that I show up and that this is still my place literally doesn't change. And that is a leader. When you can go, everything in my professional life could hit the fan, and actually what makes my life good and beautiful and rich and grounded doesn't get touched by that. The amount of safety and security, because I know so many leaders who it is so tied together that it's yes, but if I lose this, then I lose that and that and that and this, and then we won't belong here, and then we're not allowed here. And so it's of course you're terrified of failing professionally, because you feel like your entire life and everything good about it is kind of tied to your professional success. That is a burden that is too much for a human to bear. And now all of a sudden, the gift that you are created to bring into the world, like your gift, the thing that you were made to create, it's not rightly placed anymore. You need so much from it that it ceases to be a gift that you have to offer. And it's actually like a prison it's a prison of your own making that you've created. And your blessing, the blessing to you and the blessing to others has become your burden. And one way that we as leaders can keep that from happening is we got to diversify, man. We got to diversify the portfolio, if you will, right? And so I'm not saying, listen, if we would have gone under and if the company that I ran for 15 years would have gone belly up and I would have gone bankrupt in the middle of the pandemic, it would have been one of the greatest griefs of my life. It would have been deeply painful. There would have been a lot of therapy, a lot of tears, a lot of reconciling. So I'm not diminishing that it takes away the pain. But like, I would have woken up the next day going like, oh, all the good things are still here. And these are the people that I'm going to rebuild with. So leaders need, they need a small group of other leaders that do get your world, that you can be totally honest and transparent with. And then you need a group of friends who could care less how successful you are. Those are the two greatest gifts that you can give to yourself. Okay, you might be like, okay, but how? How do I find those people? Well, this is where that principle of initiative, comes into play. Do not wait for the invitation. You might get it. If you get really lucky, like win the lottery, someone else has already cultivated a small group of leaders in your industry, set the vision, set the cadence, and they're just like, hey, Jordan, we happen to have a fifth seat at the table and we want you here. That's winning the lottery. Like, it's a great thing, whatever, if it happens. Yep. You're in financial planning. You would never advise a client to be like, hope that happens, right? Like that's a viable financial strategy, or financial planning is hoping you win the lottery. If you want it, you have to go make it. Go make it. Take intentionality and take initiative. It's a huge risk. It's going to feel super vulnerable. But I would say identify 6 people in your industry, cast a vision, say, this is what we're going to be about. Here's how often we're going to meet. Here's what we're going to do. I want to share life. And I want to share all of it with you all. I want to share the blessings. I want to share the good parts. I also want to share the burdens. I want to be there for you. And I want you to be there for me. Like, don't be nonchalant about it, man. We don't need it. Nobody needs more things where they're just going and like having a beer and playing darts with people. Like, be crazy chalant and intentional about the time. It'll feel really scary. But like, 1, it will be the greatest blessing in your life. 2, you will change 5 other people's lives in the course of initiating those types of relationships. You got to go first. You got to initiate it.
Real quick here, because you shared an example of something that happens that we can all relate to. And when you were sharing it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's literally like, I'm in 6 text threads that are that way, where you were talking about how people are trying to get together. Yeah. You set a date. Just go through that real quick.
Yes. So actually, this is perfect because the next principle, so we're R-I-C-H started with I, we're actually going back to R, is rhythms. So when you decide to initiate and put effort into community building, what I want you to think about is in like, one of the phrases that I say is, if you don't date it, you won't create it. I do not want you to be spending your energy in one-off gatherings or get-togethers with kind of one-off people, unless you have a lot of extra time and capacity, in which like you be a lady who lunches. That's amazing. But if you're like, listen, I got a limited amount of time to put into social health, here's what I want you to do with it. I want you to create reoccurring events. And that in the beginning is going to feel weird because you're going to be like, these will be people that you're not intimate with yet, that you don't have those relationships with yet. So initiating really consistent and committed rhythms, it's going to feel like a mismatch because you're like, we don't even really know each other that well. And I'm telling you that if you wait for vulnerability, intimacy, connection, support, all of those things to exist before you decide to create habits and rhythms that are highly consistent and highly committed, you're never going to get there. That is like saying you will start going to the gym 3 days a week when you lose 25 pounds and get shredded abs. It literally doesn't make sense. No, brother. There will be a season where you are going to the gym 3 days a week and you don't even see the results of it, but you are going, and the consistency and the commitment is what actually drives results. Results are not a prerequisite for intimacy and commitment. I have been meeting with the same group of women here in Portland, Oregon, every single Wednesday night of my ever living life for 13 years, 8 o'clock on a Wednesday night. And this started when we were single, no kids. Now there's like 19 kids in our midst, huge life changes, professional changes, so many different things. It has been 13 years since I've had to be on a text thread that's like, where are we meeting and when are we meeting? And is it actually going to happen? And I will say in the beginning, it felt very weird to literally, like, it started with me and one other woman. We met at a party. I didn't even like really like her that much, but I was like, do you want to get together every single Wednesday night? And then at this Wednesday night, like actually use our time, like sharing the full story of our lives, really where we're at, asking for help, giving help, receiving help. That feels weird because we're not even really good friends at this point. That woman now, 13 years later, we are raising our kids together. We live in the same neighborhood together. Like, I cannot imagine my existence. And then we slowly started inviting other people into it. By the way, the men were doing the same thing at the same time. And those relationships, it's not magic. It's not kismet. It's not chemistry. Yes, for me, core values are really important. Mm-hmm. And that's what I want you to encourage to look at. Do not go out and look for your best friend. You are setting everybody up for failure because your best friend, this is like kind of like soulmate psychology with marriage. What soulmate, love at first sight, like trends did for marriage, kind of the like bestie mentality did for friendship, where we're looking for somebody who can fulfill all of our needs. There's energy, we laugh, personality, proclivities. We like to spend our time in all of the same ways. No. I want you to identify like what are the three most important core values in your life. Do they share that? That is enough. They are a candidate to be this friend in your life. And so much of security, safety, and relational health. Listen, you're not at a grocery store picking out like what the perfect ingredients for the perfect dinner. Like they're a human. You're also not a perfect human. So much of what we long for in relationship just comes from being committed to each other and saying like, I love you. That same woman, her name's Miriam. One of the things that we say, and it's only affectionate, we look at each other and we go, you are so annoying and I love you. Like there is this sense of like, you are not a perfect person. You are very annoying in very particular ways. And you are mine. You are my annoying best friend. But that level of like designer friends, like, no, we have to get away from that. So I is initiative. R is rhythms, commitment, and consistency. If you have one day a month to spend on your social health, spend it with the same people doing the same thing versus going like, okay, this month I'm going to do this. And then I got to go over to that side of town and make sure I'm cultivating these relationships. I would say truly, if you have one day, it should be doing the same thing with the same people over and over again. That is going to get you your highest ROI. Next up, C stands for communication. How are we doing on time? It's 2:00.
We're
I'm
good.
so mindful.
We're
I'm
good.
okay. Are you okay?
We're good. I'm okay. This is Rich. We're good.
Okay.
Totally
Okay.
good.
So C stands for communication. This is, okay, I've taken initiative. I'm setting up the rhythms. I'm being committed and consistent. But what are we actually doing with our time? We talked about this, Jordan, on my show. This is where we are so afraid of awkwardness, and it is keeping us from the deep and meaningful relationships that we need to thrive. I want you to just be super awkward with how you're spending the time. I want you to say, okay, we've got 90 minutes. Like make it structured. We're so obsessed with like organic chemistry, like especially with friendship. It's just like, well, if we're real friends, we should just be able to like show up and we'll just all kind of like get along and it'll be really natural. Every single group that I've been a part of that has lasted and has provided the members of that group with safety, security, and the support that they long for started out clunky, forced, not organic. It was like, here's the plan for how we're going to spend our time. And there's different things that you can do. But the point is, you want to set a structure that facilitates people are actually sharing the full story of their lives. There is space to share about what's really going on. There is space to ask for help, to give help. You are creating the structure. There are too many forces in the world that are keeping us from, this will not happen accidentally. You're a nut job. You are delusional. If you think that you are just going to show up and shoot the breeze with people. And this is just going to naturally happen. If the structure isn't there, if there isn't intentionality, it's not going to happen. And then you're going to feel really frustrated that you are giving this time and energy that maybe previously you weren't towards your social health and relational health. And you still walk away just kind of feeling pretty empty and unknown, but now you're a few hours poorer, but yet no richer when it comes to your relationships. That's because how you're spending your time, how you're communicating with one another, asking better questions, creating more of a structure for people to share the full stories of their lives. And then also under the C, communication, under that umbrella is learning the process of relational rupture and repair. We have to assume that if we achieve a level of intimacy and connection with somebody, it is not if, it is when. There will be a moment when your friend says something that felt quite dismissive or maybe disrespectful or diminishing to you. There will be a time when you had an expectation about how a friend was going to show up for you and they didn't. There will be a time when you are let down, when you feel misunderstood, when you feel offended. And in that moment, you have a choice. You have a choice. You can avoid it and you can either downplay it to yourself. I'm oversensitive. I should just let it go. That probably doesn't even matter. You can tell yourself a story. Well, obviously, Jordan, this is a narcissist sociopath. Like, who would ever say that? Like, I'm going to now just kind of like slowly back away, not give of my time or my energy. Those are typically people either avoid or attack. I'm going to attack your character, and that gives me kind of a justified reason. Do you hear something?
John, is there something on your end?
It's Harry. No, it's my child listening to Harry Potter so loud. Hold on. Hey, buddy.
I love it.
Hey, can you turn that down, sweetheart? Thank you, my love. We're going to a room and close it.
I love it. You're not going to edit that. We're just leaving it in. Keep going. That was great. Too good.
Oh gosh, I was
real
like,
life wow. Right there.
I was like, did I just hear Voldemort? Okay. Okay, so we have to understand that the relationships that we long for are not devoid of conflict or rupture. They are actually on the other side of the repair that follows rupture. True intimacy, true connection, true trust, and true safety actually comes from there was a rupture, and I was courageous enough to bring that to you, but I brought that to you also in a way that was not just courageous, but also kind, curious, and compassionate. I honored my own feelings and my own experience, but I did that in a way that didn't attack or diminish you. And there was a process that we followed for getting on the same page and for creating repair. It is the most powerful tool in your toolbox, definitely in community building. I would say in being a human. And here's the wild thing. It's so simple. It is so simple. There's actually just a 4-step process. Also, if people want, I have it on my website. If you go to my website, I'm so passionate about this. I want to put it on billboards. I will email you a copy of it's a 4-step process for having a generative conversation. I won't say that it is easy, but it is so simple. And once you are in a relationship where there's agreement between two people, hey, Jordan, I know that if we get close, this is going to happen. Before it even happens, let's talk about what we're going to do. I use this process in my marriage with my kids, whatever. This woman named Liz that I had on my podcast, told me about it. And this is a tool that I love to use. The safety that creates for two people to go, this is going to happen. And when it happens, we have the tools and the agreement that we need. It's life-changing. Most people don't actually need more friends. You probably have your people. They're probably already in your life. Maybe not. I don't know, obviously, everybody that's listening to this. What you actually lack isn't people or friends or acquaintances or more people to meet. What you actually lack are just the skills to make the relationships that you already have really safe and secure relationships that are going to insulate you from loneliness and from feeling like you don't have support and that you're not truly known. So those kind of basic communication skills. And again, these are the things that we leave to chance that are the most important things in the world that you just would never, you would leave such less important things you wouldn't leave to chance. Why are you leaving? How are we going to do relational rupture in this? So I would say Let's talk about a leader who cultivates this small group. And I do this. I call them connection cohorts. I help leaders actually find each other. And then I help them set up this structure. And it's like in your first or second meeting, what I want you to do is go, hey, so if we keep doing this, definitely sooner rather than later, in 6 weeks and 6 months, shit's going to hit the fan. Let's talk about what we're going to do. What's the expectation? Let's get in agreement. When it hits the fan, it will not be scary and it will not be fun, but it'll be a lot less scary than when you didn't have that conversation.
It's great.
We've got I, take initiative. We've got R, we invest in rhythms that are committed and consistent. We've got C, we really hone in on how are we using that time? How are we communicating with one another just to share the full story of our lives, but also how do we do conflict and hard conversations and really share and do that well. Lastly, we have H, R-I-C-H. H stands for help. Help. And this is where the vulnerability, the authenticity, and really creating subcultures that it is normative to ask for and give support is critical. And again, it's probably not going to happen accidentally because of what we talked about earlier in the show about how individualistic America is. We value independence. We value self-reliance. All of those are beautiful things to value. One downside of that is that we have so much shame and misunderstanding about needing support, about asking for support, about receiving support, and then also in turn about being people who other people feel comfortable asking for support from. And so really intentionally in our relationships, we have to just name that. We have to say, like, I want this to be a place where we get to tell the whole story of our lives. I want this to be a place where you feel like I am somebody that you can ask for support from. And even if I can't help you, here's what I do promise you. I'll be with you. I'll help you figure it out. Even if I'm not the one who can offer the support, here's my promise that I have to you as my friend, Jordan. You won't be alone. And now it's not just you wandering around the world looking for support. It'll be you and me, and I'll be there. I think about one of the most powerful scriptures to me and how Jesus modeled this, right? And I know you've heard me talk about this before because it changed my life when I read this scripture like this. The night before Jesus was crucified, he's in the garden. I mean, you talk about stress. You talk about anxiety. I think oftentimes too, we have this picture of like, yeah, but Jesus was the Son of God. And so he knew he was going to be crucified and he did it willingly. And it was to sacrifice and atone for our sins. And so probably there was not that much stress involved, right? Actually, if you read the Bible, what it says is that it says that Jesus was literally, it says, I feel as if I am being crushed by the weight of my own grief right now. Like that when we think about the physiological manifestation of anxiety, grief, sorrow, Jesus was experiencing all of it. And what did he do in that moment? I grew up hearing this story that Jesus was in the garden, the crucifixion's happening the next day, and he goes off to pray and he tells his disciples to stay awake. Says like, just stay awake and kind of keep watch. I'm going to go off and be by myself doing this holy thing with God. Could y'all just like stay awake, keep watch? And then he comes back and the disciples have fallen asleep and he's like, you couldn't even stay awake for me. And that's how I remember the story growing up. And I always think I saw myself as kind of the like sleepy disciple, right? Like, dang it, Jesus is going to die on the cross for me and I can't even stay awake. Like, God, be better, do better, right? That's actually not what the scripture says. What the scripture says is that those same three men, the same three guys that Jesus took with him to the mountaintop of the transfiguration, where he literally, it says, the scripture says that he was just the light and the glory of God shone upon him, right? So this is a literal mountaintop moment. Jesus took his three buddies with him and said, I want you to be on the mountaintop with me. I want you to see this. I want you to bear witness to this. I want you to be by my side. And then later, literal mountaintop, when he is now in a valley, the Garden of Gethsemane was in a deep valley. He is in a literal valley of his life, experiencing grief and sorrow and anxiety. And he says to those three guys, will you be with me? Will you just stay near to me? So often as Americans, and specifically as Christian Americans, we've got this kind of rugged individualist view of Jesus. And even with Jesus being like, well, Jesus only needed God. Well, if my relationship with God was strong enough, I wouldn't need other people. And that's just not, God created us. Like literally the way that we are physiologically wired and designed, it is not a flaw. to need one another. It's actually a feature. And it's not just a feature of being human.
Yes.
It's a feature of being made in the image of God.
Yes.
And so when we approach relationships like that and say, like, it is not a flaw for me to need your support. It's a feature of what this relationship is and who we get to be to one another. So much of that kind of shame and the head game that we play with, like, do we have enough? Relational equity? Can I ask? Is it okay? We have to intentionally create a completely counterculture to that. And when we do those 4 things, right? When we initiate, when we invest in rhythms that are committed and consistent, when we are intentional about the communication and the way that we are using that time that we've created, and intentional about how we have not just normal conversation, but even those hard and tender conversations. Mm-hmm. And when we create cultures where we not only normalize, but celebrate being vulnerable, being authentic, asking for and receiving support, that is how we get rich beyond our wildest dreams. That is actually what creates the level of security and safety and connection that, by the way, all the science shows us is the single best investment that you will make. There's a study out of Harvard that showed longest ever study, and we're talking legit science here, peer-reviewed medical journal science, longest ever study done on human wellness and longevity. They looked at so many different things, Jordan. How much money did you make? Education level? Did you drink? Did you smoke? Did you exercise? Where did you live? All of the things that we think about, like, what makes a good life. The single greatest predictor of how long you will live, so literally your physical longevity and health, and how happy and healthy you will be at the end of your life, is the quality of your relationships. The single most important thing. And we're going to leave that to chance. We're going to hope that happens organically, right? We're going to hope somebody else invites us to the table. We have so much more agency than we believe that we do to create lives that are rich. And here's the great thing about relational richness. It's not like commercial richness. It's not zero sum. The richer you get, actually, the richer the lives of all the people around you are indeed. By nature of getting rich, you are creating relational wealth for others as well.
Well, Liz, you say something often, and I think this is a great way to end, ! On just an amazing conversation, that you don't find community, you build it, right? And you invest in it. And there's one word that I think sort of covers everything that you're talking about, and it's this word of intentionality. And I want our listeners to know that we had the schedule for 2 hours, and for a variety of reasons, we're over on time. And I got 3 hours and 15 minutes with you today. We recorded on both shows. But here's what's so great about Liz Bohannon is you were willing to bend the rules and bend time and go longer, because I think there is something about your spirit that shows up and says, dang it, this matters. And I'm going to invest the right way. I'm not just going to get in and get out and say it at a podcast and put it on social and check the box. It's if I'm going to have a conversation, I'm going to mean it. I'm going to go deep. And we're going to bend some rules, and my kid's going to be watching Harry Potter, and then that's real life, and we get interrupted. And so, and we go back to, but I'm serious. This is, and you get this from being in this world of podcasting and events. All too often, it's you jump in and you share a few thoughts, and you check the box, you move on. And thank you for being somebody who didn't do that today, who gave all of who you are to our community. And I love learning from you. And I continue to believe you're one of the top communicators over time. I think this is one of the most important topics that we could be talking about as a society, in the home and community and the workplace. And I want to say thanks for hours and hours and hours invested on this topic. And I want to commission you to get off this podcast and go spend time with your family, because you gave us more time than you were planning to spend. But I do want to say thanks for being a friend, and thanks for the way that you continue to show up for me and so many others.
Likewise. Well, thanks for taking a bet on me all those years ago on that first show, and that it was just the beginning of a beautiful friendship. And I look forward to lots more. So thanks for being you.
Hey, that's the truth. God bless you, my friend. This has been another episode of the Growth Over Goals podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Montgomery, and I want to say thanks again for being with us today. Thanks again to John Choate and his team at Storyline Multimedia for all that they do behind the scenes to make these episodes go. Be well, be great. Have an amazing day.